there's been some headlines on TVNZ that are basically talking about National in the driver's seat. That's not the words they've used, that's my words. And it actually is very little has changed. But as we've been saying all the way through, I think it's fair to say we've been consistent on this. I think National and ACT are certainly favourites at the moment, but not by much. And not by the kind of amount that couldn't be turned over. Like, imagine that you had these are always Chewy's favourite analogies, but two sports teams playing. And one was a 53-47 favourite. So the 47 team could easily win. I don't know if it's as easily win in this, but that's sort of what we're talking for the election so far, especially because of the undecided. And let's just have a look at the latest TVNZ poll from tonight.
National and ACT could form the next government in just, according to our latest One News Varian poll. It is just under 3 months until the election, and Labor seems to have been dented by a series of ministerial distractions. Political editor.
So just get this as well, yeah? Remember, National, ACT, they're all telling you that this is the worst government there's ever been, right? That they're incompetent, that they can't do this, they can't do that. Even TVNZ is now saying, look at all these controversies. This is controversy. So you would expect to see a massive drop, because if they're so bad and it's such an easy choice to go to National, you would expect National to be massively ahead and picking up votes, hand over fist. Is that the case though, Chewy? Shall we find out?
Jessica Mackay has been crunching the numbers.
We last polled just after the May budget. Now, as election day gets closer, here's how the numbers stack up in our latest One News poll. National has the most support, sitting on 35.
Now, 35%. It's not terrible, but wouldn't you expect that means Labor's going to be like on 21 or something? Because remember, they're the worst thing since sliced bread. And if they're like not on 20 or 21%, then what does that say about their competitors? If they're the worst ever, what does it say about them?
But it's dipped too. Labor is on 33, also dropping.
It's interesting, isn't it? So the worst political party there's been in the last 100 years, and this political party that everyone seems to think who's opposing them, has been like the arbiters or the authors of the worst economic downfall and the most repression and all these sorts of things. It's margin of error between the two main parties at the moment. That's interesting, eh? You would think if they were so bad and National was so good, they'd be smashing them. Then it's margin of error at the moment.
2. ACT is on 12, up 1. The Greens are back in a healthy position on...
So let's just look at the four majors. We've got Te Pāti Māori to come. You've got 47 versus 43. That's probably still margin of error between the two of them. But then you add Te Pāti Māori in.
10, up 3. New Zealand First is steady on 3, and Te Pāti Māori is also on 3, up.
So if you get the natural partners together, now remember we're not projecting, we don't like doing that here on the show. You've got 46, 47. So any of these headlines that have been kind of going around talking about
12% undecided
and 12% undecided. Talking about that, National's definitely sort of in the driver's seat. I know we're kind of hinting that they're probably the slight favourites at the moment, but it is not. It is not anything like there's been no change. It's been razor thin the whole time.
1. Now let's take a look at some of the other parties picking up support. The Opportunities Party is on 2, up 1.
Don't you love to see
Democracy
that?
New Zealand, Freedoms New Zealand and One Party all sitting on 1.
Isn't this beautiful? Look at these right-wing lunatic parties shaving off 3%. Look, I think, remember racist Uncle Bob, we want to see all of these at 2% by election day. All of them at 2%. And then you've got a left-leaning government again. And you know what? The downsides of Labor, in my opinion, at the moment, of which there are many, I'm quite looking forward to seeing them potentially in government with the Greens and having the Greens actually be quite impacting to what they're doing. As Chewy, as you've been saying the whole time, they seem to be the only ones costing out their policies at the moment, and being really clear and obvious with what they're doing. It would be really interesting to have, they used to talk about Winston Peters being a handbrake, but to have someone a party who could, I guess, both where Chewy and I sit politically, you may not, fine, but maybe pull them more left, which is where we would ultimately like them to be. Then unfortunately, Jacinda, who decided to be status quo and try and be, nice to everyone at one stage and missed a huge opportunity. So I love that. I love Democracy New Zealand on 1, Freedoms New Zealand on 1, and One Party on 1. I'd love to, I'd love to see them all on 4.9, to be perfectly honest with you. because that would be fantastic for a left-leaning government. But there you go. What do you think, Chewy, before I keep going?
I do not refer to Winston Peters as a handbrake. I refer to him as an albatross around our fucking necks. Would the man please go away? And if he's a handbrake, then I want the Greens as a brick on the accelerator. More progress, more progressive, faster, now, more.
Yeah.
Go. Does this poll cover their tax announcement?
I don't think so.
They've got a 3% bump.
Yeah, I don't think so because that was only last
That doesn't
week.
cover that.
I don't think so.
Or to come then.
Why don't you
15%.
go to One News, onenews.co.nz, and they'll probably have the terms and conditions of the actual poll on there. I don't think they mention it in here. If they do, I've missed it. Go and have a look. I would be surprised because that was just like last Thursday that it would be out this quickly. But have a look. Oh, we lost volume. Oh, that's because I'm like that.
There's also 12% who don't know how they'll vote or refuse. There's also 12% who don't know how they'll vote or refuse to say, and that stayed pretty even all year.
12% is a lot, eh? Now, like I said earlier, it could be. I haven't decided between Greens and Labour, but I would think there's a good chunk of that who are going to be, I'm undecided. Maybe I'm pulling numbers out my arse, but perhaps half of them are undecided, maybe 6, and maybe the other half are like, well, Act National, well, Labour, Greens, not sure, undecided, but there'll be a good chunk of them who are like, I have no idea, don't know where I'm going to go yet.
So the dates of this was between July 8th and July 12th. So yes, it wouldn't cover the Greens tax announcement. So I'm going to call it now 15%.
Okay, let's get going.
Turning our attention now to how this translates to seats in Parliament. National would get 46 MPs over here in blue. Add to that 15 from ACT, and that's 61, the exact number needed to form a government.
But remember, in their little projection game, also 1 seat away from not forming government.
So it would be National and ACT in charge. Labour's 43 red seats over here, plus 12 from the Greens and 4 from Te Pāti Māori is 59. Not enough for them to be in the driving seat.
And 2 seats away from being government. And we all know that the Greens typically pick one up after the election from international votes and special votes. So, it's 49.5% to 50.5%. That's what it is at the moment.
Bringing up the preferred Prime Minister numbers now. Chris Hipkins is still the favourite on 24, but he's dipped 1. Christopher Luxon is on 20, up 2. David Seymour is steady on 7. Winston Peters is on 2, and Green MP Chloe Swarbrick is also steady on 2.
So there you go. That's all we're going to look at from this because we're basically just wrapping up now. But, if National wants to win, really Luxon needs to be the preferred Prime Minister. Pretty much every year the preferred Prime Minister is the party that wins. I'm not saying it's an absolute done deal guarantee. And he's trending in the right direction, up 2. Hipkins down 1. But also you've got to say Hipkins has had a pretty average sort of a couple of weeks and there have been some ministerial missteps. And if he's had that kind of a, let's just even be generous to him and say bad press. I think it's more than that, but even if it was just bad press, to only lose 1, it's not the worst in the world. There was a poll last week that we covered, was it the Courier poll, where he dropped 6. He was still ahead of Luxon, but he had dropped 6. We don't like doing projections, that, but what the projections do show is the real vote. Because although they were polling at 30, 33 and 35 or 31 and 33, when you take it out of the number of votes above 5%, that gives you the real vote. So the real vote gives actually National and ACT more than 50% of the vote by a smidge, by 1 seat. It's an interesting one. It's no different. I wonder sometimes sitting in these TVNZ newsrooms if they kind of go, shit, it's exactly the same as it was before. How are we going to spin this? And it seems that they're spinning it by going, ACT and National could govern alone. It's like, no. In theory, if it was held today, and those 12% still were undecided, perhaps, but let's not get too ahead of ourselves, Joey.
Why don't we bring in the absolute nightmare scenario, the resurrected corpse of Winston Peters coming in with 1 seat and being a kingmaker again? Because that's always worked out super good for the country.
15 weeks later, he decided whatever it was. Didn't he do like 12 weeks at one stage? There was a
something
fishing
like that.
trip and some ridiculous amount.
He's got to milk it for all he's worth. Man's 78. Go to bed.
He's looking pretty good for 78. It's all the whiskey and cigars, bro.
Because he's preserved.
Because when you said to me that he wasn't a handbrake, I thought you were going to say he looks like a leather handbag, but that wouldn't be fair. So
that's tobacco stained leather. It's like when you go to a nice steak restaurant and they do the dry aged beef. So it's the same. They put them in a dehumidifier.
All right, should we chuck some text up there, and shall we get then on to the I don't know if it is a controversial topic. Maybe it will be on gender pay gap. Anything we want to get into in the text before we do this?
Yeah, yep, absolutely. Mr. Rob Burney, Schwarbrick needs to start slaying opposition leaders and absorbing their preferred prime minister ratings. I'm going to editorialize here, just like the Highlander.
That's such a good movie.
Such a good movie.
I'm going to be held responsible.
Emma brings up a good point here. See, isn't it crazy there's no green leader on there, but Chloe should be the leader? I mean, I wonder if that's an issue, right? Because, I mean, she gets all those headlines. She's very good at it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we had that conversation the other week, and someone in the chat, credit you, pointed out, I think that, or maybe it was in the, I don't know where it was. It wasn't me. I don't think it was you either, Chewy, pointing out that she's actually very effective in this sort of free roaming. She's a free range MP, you know. She's not barn raised. She's a free range. She can go and do what she wants, and she can be where she wants and say what she wants. Whereas the leaders have a different role to play. So I think actually at the moment it is actually the perfect spot for her. And I'll put it this way: if she sticks around, and I don't say that with any knowledge that she wouldn't, but you never know. You know, young, incredibly impressive politicians could also be young, incredibly impressive advocates or business people, or you know. Or ambassadors or whatever, then I would think that the leadership is certainly in her hands. And I kind of think, I kind of feel that this is me, think this is unrealistic, but she could just, and maybe should just be the leader on her own. You know, I don't see the necessity for a co-leader if you've got someone of her caliber in the leadership position. I know they'd have
to change their constitution to do that.
But still, I mean, why wouldn't you throw that question out there at the very least?
What else have we got here? There was a very good. The 1% party. There we go. Rebranding there. Freedoms. Go them.
Honestly, we want them all to get to. I mean, if you're like-minded and you want to see a left-leaning government, if that's what you want to see all of those little parties on 2%. Honestly, you really, really do. And then you want them to get to the end of it and go, how did this left-wing party get in? How's the chaos of coalition get in? It's like, well, thanks to you guys, and we really appreciate your effort in helping the green-led Labour government. See what I did there?
Yeah.
Did you see that?
There is a danger here, though, and I think V-Bunch identifies it here. Lots of loons are going over to Winnie. Now, if he manages to go on a charm offensive and go, look, guys, I'm one of you. I'm the only one that spoke to you at the Freedom Convoy, whatever. I've been going on Voices for Fuckwit FM, I think 2 or 3 times now so far. Stop voting for these losers that don't know how to be in government. Vote for me. Suddenly, what have they got? 3, 4, 5%? When he's back in the game, the nightmare scenario that I talked about comes true. He becomes the kingmaker.
Yeah.
Now, hopefully, they're all so hopped up on ivermectin that never happens.